Okay, I have played 12 minutes and I'm a bit torn about it. It's a clever little concept with a, let's say, questionable execution. I have waited for this game since it was announced, about 2 years ago at the Microsoft E3 conference, and well, I don't think I'm really disappointed. But I'm also not... maybe I can explain how I feel about this game in the next few minutes. First off, don't let the name confuse you. The game is longer than just 12 minutes. I spent about 4 hours with it before I saw the credits, and a big chunk of that time was me being confused because after making good progress, I couldn't really follow the game's logic anymore. This game is kind of a mixture of Groundhog Day and, well, I won't spoil this right now, but we'll get to it later. In 12 minutes, the protagonist is trapped in a time loop, as well as in his apartment. Every time you try to leave the apartment, the loop starts anew, with you entering the living room. This also happens if you die or get beaten up, or if the titular 12 minutes run out.
Oh, fuck me, are you serious?
These 12 minutes run in real time, but many of the loops are a bit shorter. But wait, I talked about dying. So what is this game even about? So, the protagonist arrives at home after a hard day's work and his wife surprises him with his favorite dessert. They talk for a bit, the wife reveals that she's pregnant, when they suddenly hear a knock on the door and a man shouting.
I'm with the police. Turn around, please.
What? Me?
Yes, you. Hands behind your back. Let's go.
The man introduces himself as a police officer and accuses the wife of murdering her father. He arrests both the protagonist and his wife, and shortly after that strangles the player character to death, I guess. And suddenly we are back at the start of the loop, with a 10-minute countdown to our demise. And now we have to find clues about the crime the wife is accused of. And we have to manipulate the events to get the protagonist and his wife out of this alive. Every new information we get, we can use in the next loop to faster and more successfully steer the events in our favor. There's a lot of different dialogues and just little things to explore and experiment with, and sometimes you can feel really clever for discovering a new method to get through a loop. But as cool as these moments can be, the game is riddled with inconveniences that, well, that dampened my enjoyment. In the reveal trailer, the top-down perspective seemed unique and a bit artsy-fartsy for this kind of game, and I mean, it is. But now, during gameplay, it just looks awkward, and it doesn't help that animations are really cheap and clumsy and characters just stumble all over the place. It all works, but it just feels clunky. You are slow and it's not always clear what you are able to do or supposed to do. The game is, controls-wise, a very casual point-and-click adventure. Clicking on the ground moves the character, clicking on an object lets you interact with it or pick it up, and you can also drag objects from your inventory towards other characters or objects, to use those in combination. When interacting with certain objects, the game shifts perspective to give a closer look, and you have to click on an empty space, sometimes the game isn't really sure about that, to return to the normal perspective. But sometimes you accidentally interact with another object that was out of view, but still registered you clicking on it. And while this isn't the biggest problem, it's fucking annoying to constantly open and close the closet door after looking at the clothes inside. All your actions and all your findings come with unique lines of dialogue, and there are a lot of different ways a conversation can progress. But if a, let's call it, event is happening while you are presenting your findings to another character, they will start to talk over each other, and even over themselves. It's really easy to break the dialogue. No matter how dangerous the situation is, the player character has some canned lines that never change. So even when some maniac breaks down the door, he calmly states that he will continue this conversation with his wife at a later time.
Let's talk later.
This can't be happening. What? Don't open the door.
The other characters have the same problem. After I managed to get a previously hostile character to become friendly with the player character, I tried to show him a certain item. And because I missed the one specific moment to do so, his next line was hostile again, even though he was still on the protagonist's side. Stuff like this happens all the time. But what I'm trying to say is, there are a lot of neat little moments in this game. You try to experiment and see what you can get away with. You can be nice or rude to your wife. You can try to help her and get beaten up. You can hide in the closet while she's assaulted. You can drug her. You can kill the police officer or torture him. You can use your knowledge gained from previous loops to scare your wife away or get her to help you. But every one of those examples comes with some flaws or inconveniences. Dialogue that doesn't match what's happening, stunted animations that break immersion, ludicrous restrictions to the actions you can take. I mean, you know how the officer behaves if he doesn't see anyone after breaking in, and you can even set a trap for him. But you can't ask your wife to hide from him in the closet or under the bed. As long as she's conscious when he arrives, she will confront him. No matter what. A lot of potential is wasted in this game, in part because the devs didn't implement certain actions and, even more annoying, you get locked out of certain actions if the game doesn't feel like it. And while this waste of potential is a bit sad, it wouldn't be too bad if it weren't for how the game handles each loop. While you can use your acquired knowledge as kind of a shortcut in the final few loops to get to the conclusion faster, before that you have to take the same awkwardly slow actions over and over again, because you don't know what your characters or the event's limitations are. So you will mess up and have to try again. And that's fine, that's the whole purpose of a time loop game. But there is no way to get easy access to an event you already triggered multiple times. You have to watch the clumsy animations, wait for other characters to finish, well, whatever it is they're doing, or just wait for events to start. But luckily, with the last one, the game throws you a bone and gives you a few opportunities to speed up the flow of time until the story continues. And I guess this is the part where I talk about the story and get into spoiler territory. If you're interested in this game's concept, then, well, if you have a Game Pass subscription, you should definitely check it out. But since this game is not only a very niche experience and very flawed, and costs about $20, I can't really recommend it. Maybe if you get it in a sale later down the line. I enjoyed my time with it, but I think I would have been more pissed off if I had to pay full price for it. Okay, let's continue with the story section. I won't spoil everything, and especially not every decision you have to make to reach the end. But I might still ruin some of the twists. I mean, I most definitely will when I go back to my comparison from the start of the video, which I will now clarify. I think this game is best described as a mix between Groundhog Day and Old Boy. We have a story about revenge, past misgivings unknown to the protagonist at the start of the story, hypnosis, a character called Monster, the concept of ignorance as actual bliss, and, well, that too. The game's description mentions a few artsy-fartsy movies as inspiration, but not Old Boy, so I don't know if it's just a coincidence or if it's the devs trying to hide their plagiarism. After the first loop, you only know that a man who might or might not be a cop accuses your wife of murder and is looking for a pocket watch. Your wife refutes the accusations and you're left with just more questions. And now you have to decide, do you trust the cop or your wife? And this will inform your later actions. You can and will be a brave idiot, a coward, and a horrible person. All with the knowledge that you can always start over. And yeah, there are some pretty powerful moments in this game. And you find more and more opportunities to get more information. If you throw baseless accusations at your wife, she will stop talking to you or walk out on you. But if you capture the officer and interrogate him, you get valuable pieces of information to loosen your wife's tongue in a later loop. But it's easy to misread what the game is showing you, and because of that, getting stuck. I tried a lot of times to fight the cop, because I wasn't sure I could trust him. I wasn't even sure he actually was a cop, because he has neither a badge or a warrant in his inventory, and his handcuffs are cable ties. And if you let him have his way, you see what a horrible person he really is. Maybe if it weren't so tedious to get back to a specific scene, I'd have been more willing to try every possible interaction, but after a while I tried to avoid certain events and even cancelled a loop by leaving the apartment if it didn't go as I had intended. Despite how many possibilities there are in the beginning of the game, it becomes incredibly restrictive towards the end. You can prove your wife's innocence, but if you try to show the proof to the cop, he just dismisses it. No, it has to be in a certain place, and your wife has to tell the cop to look at the proof for himself. Then it works. At the end of the game, you have to get some items that you didn't even need for most of the game. You have to remember single lines of dialogue or just objects in the environment from hours back. Some of the puzzles are a bit far out. I don't know if moon logic is the correct term in these instances, but it's appropriate enough. The conclusion of the story was a bit hard for me to grasp, because it showed conflicting information. At least I think it did. The top-down perspective and the reuse of Willem Dafoe for, I believe, multiple different characters made it hard for me to understand the ending.
How you think that's gonna go?
I don't know who was talking to whom. I don't know if there really was a magical or mystical time travel element in this game, or if it was all in the main character's head. The twist at the end packed some punch, but got quickly overshadowed by convoluted bullshit and frankly raises more questions than it answers. This game really wanted to be a great objet d'art, but it comes off more as a self-absorbed masturbation material for intellectuals. But maybe I'm just not sophisticated enough to really appreciate it. As it stands, it is a neat little concept with some clever ideas that could have been so much more. This game needed more polish and a little more freedom. Instead, it tried to mask these failings with the use of famous actors like Willem Dafoe and Daisy Ridley. But I believe this makes the flaws even more obvious. The game is fun enough though for what it is, and if you are interested in the concept, try to get it cheap. And if you want a more substantial experience, maybe try out the Sexy Brutale. It's not really the same concept, but it too revolves around you being trapped in a time loop and have to gather information to have an edge over your opponents in later loops. So yeah, maybe give that a try. And with that, I bid you adieu. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again on the next game.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah?
Follow me to your apartment. I'm with the police.
Oh. All right.